Hey guys, welcome back to more stories. In this video, OP got fined $2,000 for parking in his own driveway in San Francisco. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. The first one starts like this. I, 29 female, lived with my mom and her new boyfriend, we will call him A-Hat, when I was a child. They met when I was 10 years old. From the moment I met this man, I never liked him. He gave off the most terrifying vibes, and even as a child I could instinctively tell that there was something wrong with this man. Fast forward 6 years and my mom and A-Hat are getting married on my birthday, no less. I have 3 new siblings in that time from their marriage, and this man for the past 6 years has made my life a living hell. He was physically and verbally aggressive almost every single day to me, my mom and siblings. However, he did and still does have a particular dislike towards me, and to this day I'm still not sure why. He would exclude me from family events, force family members to not give me presents at Christmas and birthdays, to then humiliate me on those events and make a scene of me not receiving gifts, body shame me. I was 11 years old when he did this, mind you, and calls me an SLUT for wearing a skirt. Spent approximately $50,000 of my inheritance, would hide my phone for no reason, so I could not contact my dad or friends or extended family, and also would not let me eat the yummy food but would sit there and eat it in front of me, and that's just a snippet of the charms of this literal awful human being. I moved out of home very shortly after the wedding, and at 16 I was living on my own, juggling 2 part-time jobs, full-time school in a brand new state and a brand new city. And by the way, Ripe Stars, just to quickly interject here, I'm always curious how that is even possible or legal. I mean, OP was underage and apparently getting no help whatsoever. What a sad situation. Anyway, it was a heck ton better than living at home. Fast forward again another 10 years, I'm 26 years old, and my mom has finally had the courage to separate from A-Hat with my 3 siblings after years of further abuse from A-Hat. He still tries and terrorizes their lives and controls them, and demonstrates very threatening behavior, but at least they are out. My 3 siblings choose to stay with my mom for obvious reasons, but still had to have visitations with their father due to custody arrangements. A-Hat always had a lot of resentment towards the children for this, but can you blame them? Fast forward now to present day, I have full care of the oldest of my 3 younger siblings, as she wanted to escape A-Hat and moved states to live with me. I fully supported this because I've always tried to help where I can. The youngest of the 3 stays with mom, the middle child, my brother, was very traumatized by A-Hat's behavior and consequently has a lot of untreated trauma and behavior to go with it. I tried to take care of him, but he was too violent for me to handle. Then brother moves back to my mother and youngest sister. He is also too violent for them to handle. Last week, Sunday, my brother assaulted a family member when at mom's house. My brother was escorted off the property by police and taken to A-Hat's house to live there now. I get a message from A-Hat on Wednesday for the first time in years saying, "Your brother is missing, the police have been called. If you know anything, call me or the police." Instant panic sets in. I feel like a scared child again from a very benign message from this man. I sat there looking at this message all night, wondering what to do about it. That's when it came to me. A-Hat asked me to call the police if I knew anything. A-Hat did not specify what I had to know and tell the police. Just that if I knew anything to call them, and so I did. I called the police and told them that I felt I had some very important information to tell them regarding my missing brother. I told them everything, all the abuse that had happened to me and my family at great length. I told them that if they return my brother when they find him to A-Hat's house, that they will be putting him in direct danger. I told them absolutely everything. The police was very interested to hear this about A-Hat and put me on hold while the police officer I was speaking to went to discuss something with her superior. When I get taken off hold, I'm talking to a more senior officer now. He wants me to reiterate the story, which I do, and he says someone will call me back. Okay, I think. I get a call back not too long after, and they ask if needed would I sign a statement to what I had said. Of course I agree. I go down to my local police station to sign said statement, in other words what I've told the police. There's now an arrest warrant out for A-Hat for a multitude of reasons. It seems like there was more on his police file that I was not aware of, and I was told that under no circumstances would A-Hat be getting my brother, when he is found, or any of the other children back in his care. Not the juiciest of malicious compliance on here, but I did comply with my a-hole ex-stepfather's request of calling the police if I knew anything. And now he won't be able to hurt my family anymore, so that is worth smiling over. Update: my brother is still missing at this stage, however, I also feel confident that he is okay. My brother is relatively smart when he is not in a heightened state, and I also think he would have potentially run away to hide, hopefully at a friend's house. He tries to remove himself from bad situations because he knows he might struggle to control his anger when/if he did get angry. He also removes himself from getting hurt too, who would have guessed though. If I find any information what comes to Ahead, I will update this, but it could be a while given that I've had the displeasure of knowing Ahead for 19 years and he has slimed his way out of every single repercussion for his terrible actions. And yeah, ripe stars, even though I think the story already has kind of a satisfying ending, unfortunately so far there have been no further updates, but in case something happens, I will keep you updated. Either way, the next one is the title story and it's titled, I got fined $2,000 for parking in my driveway in San Francisco. So I feel the need to give some background detail, especially for those that don't live here in San Francisco. If we are known for something, then the roads being huge hills are very high on that list. As you can guess, parking on the street is extremely difficult, both due to the hills and curves and because it is a city. City means a lot of cars and never enough street parking. This is actually one of the reasons that my husband and I have chosen to only have one car and share it. Because to avoid street parking, we are able to park it in front of our house on what we consider a driveway. A paved area in front of our house large enough to fit the car. We have been doing it like this for years, as have many other people. About a year ago, we got a letter from the city saying that our car was illegally parked and we were getting a fine of $2,000. Plus, we were told that if the car was not removed by a certain date, 3 days after we got the letter, I assume to give us time to get the warning, we would be fined more every single day. Now this was ridiculous because we were not blocking the sidewalk or be on anybody else's property. I had no idea what they were considering it illegal because the letter did not go into details. But switching to street parking was not something we wanted to do without a fight. I called the number on the letter and got transferred for about an hour and a half before I managed to get in touch with somebody who could answer my questions. I just wanted to know one simple thing: how was parking my car in front of my house illegal? The man said, due to the city law, if a car is parked on your property, it must be in a driveway. Me, we do park it in a driveway. That's why I'm confused. You want us to pay this amount of money, but we didn't do anything wrong. Man, hold on, I can see images of your house that are in the file, and I can see where you are parking does not legally classify as a driveway here. Me, what is a driveway then if not where you park a car? Man, a driveway needs to either go along the side of a house or end when meeting a garage. Yours is having the car in front of the house itself. We consider that parking in your yard. Me, we don't have a garage. If I park next to the house, I would be in front of the neighbor's house. I wanted to know if there was anything I could do, but he just transferred me again to another department that had nothing to do with what I wanted. I left the conversation with a couple answers, but not satisfied in the slightest. What bothered me the most was that there was no issues parking there for decades until they decided suddenly to enforce the rule. I felt like it was some way for the city to get some quick and easy money by screwing people over. I have what some people might call a hard head and others might call me just plain stubborn, but I couldn't make myself pay that fine or enter parking my car somewhere else. My knees were not in great shape, so if I had to park at the bottom of the hill and walk halfway up where my house is on a daily basis, it would not be great. I spoke to a lawyer about the whole thing and he said that it might not end in my favor, but I could file a lawsuit against the city, claiming that the spot was being used as a driveway for so long that it be considered one. Basically, it can be grandfathered in that the spot was meant for a car. Suing the city is not an easy thing, and I'm not even talking about the lawsuit itself. Just trying to get a date in court takes forever. Meanwhile, our car was still parked in front of the house and we were piling up daily fines like nobody's business. They were not allowed to act on them due to the active lawsuit, but they still could legally keep fining us. And if we lost, we would owe a huge pile of money that we really did not have. So a lot was at stake. The lawyer told me to gather old photos of the house with a car being parked in the driveway. We were in luck with that because we were not the first members of the family to own this house. It dates back a couple generations, and although the quality is nothing like modern day, it was there. Pictures of my grandma standing in front of the house with a car in the same spot, with the car so old it looked like it belonged in a museum. Anyway, my lawyer started arguing in court about the definition of a driveway being too loosely interpreted and that the front of my house was acting as one. Also pointing out that these older areas usually didn't have driveways due to the properties being built before cars were even a common thing to have. I think he also mentioned that it being private property, and since I was not blocking a sidewalk, there was zero harm. Finally, the pictures came into play, showing that the spot always seemed to be used for parking a car. Plus the fact that the city only now is deciding to start enforcing these laws all of a sudden, showing that in my area there's a strong precedent for parking in those kinds of areas. Then came time to wait and wait for the court to make their decision on what was gonna happen. It was stressful, and if the call came that the city won, I might not be telling this story at all. Anyway, we were granted permission to continue parking in front of our house, and the fines for doing so were gonna be taken away and waived. We owed the city nothing now, and we were not gonna have to park our car on the street. Compared to others, our fight and drama might not seem that exciting or kind of pointless. It worries me to think about what a city can do to people and have the ability to ruin lives. A $2,000 fine for some people could mean not getting food or medicine, especially for a rule that nobody knew existed and was never being enforced before. There's a pretty satisfying ending to this story where I found out that now there's a group reviewing laws like the one I argued against, trying to go into the city legislature and try to weed out some rules that seem to hurt people or seem to be outdated, saving both the people from problems if they get enforced and the city from having problems if the laws come up in a courtroom. For me, I think the best was just seeing how angry the representatives from the city were that they had to go to court over something like this and have no decent defense. A stubborn person like me always enjoys winning and seeing that look of defeat on the people who deserved it. And here Ripe stars props to OP for standing up against the city and securing his parking spot. If you would have been in OP's shoes, would you have also fought them in court, or would you have given up and given them the $2,000 and not parked there anymore? Let us know what you would have done in the comments. Either way, the next one is a malicious compliance story. So our company has a very strict rule when it comes to salary exempt employees. Not even sure if it's legal, but okay. You have to submit a timesheet at the beginning of each month. The only thing they want on it is any time missed and how much makeup and PTO you are using. They deduct pay for any time missed that is not made up or that PTO does not cover. They ask to not submit your full clock in and out and lunches, just any time missed. I do, however, keep a notebook of my in, out and lunch times, and have always done so. For your info, I'm always super early to work so that I can take an hour lunch every day. It's allowed, and a few others do this as well. The issue is, some of the upper management don't like me. I really don't know why, but it's very apparent in the micromanagement style of this place, and so Karen watches me like a hawk. I always get here before her, she waltzes in 10 minutes late every day. She has apparently complained to my supervisor that I take very long lunches and I'm never around when she calls me. Karen suggested that I was likely fudging my timesheets because there's no way I was not using PTO while being gone for so long every day at lunch. This launched, because she is a fixture here, an investigation into my timesheets. Long story short, they pulled me into my supervisor's office to discuss the issue. They stated that because my timesheets were not explicit, that they had to assume I was doing this and that they were assuming that it had been going on for a while. And they were preparing to fire me based off of Karen's suggestions. I then pipe up with, "But yes, I can prove my times." I then pull out my time log and they go somewhat quiet. After evaluating my time log, which took a good 45 minutes, they discovered that they in fact owed me 2 hours of PTO because of my overestimations. I was free to leave. As I walk out of my office, Karen is in my office, seemingly about to start cleaning my personal stuff out. When she saw me sit back down, she was fuming. I heard her stomp into my supervisor's office and scream at him for 10 minutes. Everything was pretty muffled, but you could easily get the gist that she was mad I was not being fired. And the next one is a petty revenge story. So I was in Los Angeles roaming around the streets shopping when I walked past this shoe store. It was more of a stripper shoe joint with all kinds of heels and boots, and I thought I might check it out. I walked inside and there was nobody in there, totally empty. I found these red boots that I thought were cute, so I asked the store clerk if I could try them on. The clerk was a middle-aged Eastern European woman with a stern look on her face. She was watching a show on her computer and got really upset that I even asked her to try shoes on. Finally, she said okay and went in the back and got me 2 sizes to try on. I tried them on and loved them. Meanwhile, she was huffing and puffing behind me, being super impatient. I told her I was gonna take a walk, think about it, and probably come back and buy them. I did not have US currency, so I was gonna run and get cash. It was cash only. But she was livid. She barked at me, asking why I was wasting her time, grabbed the boots aggressively and screamed, "What do you need to think about?" I got so mad and stormed out of the store. She didn't only lose a customer, she was also in for some petty revenge. So I was traveling with a group of friends and I told them what happened and we made a plan. They all went inside, again the store had no customers, and spent the next hour trying on all the shoes. The guys were trying to squeeze into women's stripper heels and my girlfriends always gave the clerk the wrong shoe size to try on. The clerk was fuming. After an hour, my friends stopped trying everything on and told her, "We'll think about it," and stormed out of the store. And the next one is another petty revenge story. My mom and stepdad came to visit for a few days a few months after I settled in, nicely decorated in my style, all my own furniture. One of the evenings they stayed, I had to work a late shift. They planned to go out for dinner and to the pub and I left them to it. So I came home at 11 p.m. and my mom had moved nearly all of the furniture around and all my books and kitchen stuff were moved to different shelves or cupboards. She even moved my bed in my room, so when I opened the bedroom door, it hit the bed. I was pissed, so I angrily fixed what I could that night before going to bed. I spoke to her about it the next day, explained it's my home and I had it how I liked it, so stop please. I put everything else back, which took hours. She grumbled the whole time that it looked better her way. Their last day I nipped out to the shops to get her some nice bits for lunch and in the hour I was gone, she had done it again. Moved all my kitchen stuff around to where she liked it, and again I told her off. It's my house, my rules, but she still maintained it was better her way and I should just let her crack on. Fine, I let her do what she wanted and put the stuff back when they left. So, onto my revenge, I went to visit their house 6 months later and did it to her. She went out to work one day and I rearranged every bit of furniture I could by myself, just everything. Swapped the dining room and living room furniture over so you had to walk through the living room and across the hallway to get to the dining room. Also swapped their bedroom and guest room curtains over. The windows were different sizes, so their now bedroom curtains were 2 foot too short. Even the pointless little things like moving the spoons to a different side of the drawer and moved every photo on the walls to a different wall. I also rearranged the fridge. All in all together, it took me around 7 hours. My stepdad was home while I did it and laughed his head off the whole time. He refused to help but understood, so let me crack on. Neither me nor my stepdad said anything when she got home. We just sat watching TV, which was now in what was their dining room, and I asked her how was work. She didn't say a word. She walked around the house taking it all in for 20 minutes. Then came and sat down, looked at me and said, "Point taken." Dad put it back to how it was the next time I visited. We have not spoken of it since. And yeah, ripe stars, that is absolutely brilliant revenge. I just hate it when people visit you and they feel the need to move your furniture or move your stuff in general. You know, I'm a person, I really know where all of my stuff is, and if someone messes with that, it really freaks me out. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I live in Eastern Europe and at one point the neighborhood I lived in seemed to form a kind of group. I don't really have a good name for it and it's very similar to the HOAs in other countries that I will call it that. The biggest difference of it being that I believe HOAs are sanctioned while things here seem to be a little bit new and wild with no clear lines. I'm not one to jump into new things, especially that look a little off, so I declined joining, which really upset the leader, who I will call HOA president. I noticed that one thing he would do once a home joined was use his power to control pretty much everything about them. He wanted a certain percentage of their income and free access to use their land as he wanted. It all felt very off to me, which is another reason I wanted nothing to do with it, but that did not stop him from constantly asking me to join. I wanted nothing to do with him and told him so several times over about an 8-month period. My wife got sick and she needed to go to the hospital. We don't exactly live near one, so we had to go to the nearest city and I stayed there with my wife. At first I went back to the farm a couple of times, but the time and money to travel did not make any sense. Combining that with my wife getting sicker instead of better made my decision for me. I would have somebody feed my animals and I would just stay at the hospital with my wife as long as the staff let me without making me go to a hotel to sleep and eat something. After about 3 weeks, it was clear to everybody that nothing was helping and she was just slowly dying. At that point, nothing could make me leave her hospital room and I stayed there until the very end. She was only 40 and I was 42, so I figured we had a lot more good years together. That we would grow old on the farm, so I was inconsolable that she had passed away. We never had kids and without her, I felt like I was alone and did not have anybody. I know that this part of the story seems like a totally different story, but while I was in the city and hospital, the HOA president was doing something to my property. I came home and just wanted to mourn, but instead found that my land had a fence right down the middle of it. I could still access my home, but the area with my animals, my shed, and an area with a small garden and a chair were no longer accessible. I was actually mostly angry about the last thing because it was my wife's favorite spot to sit and read, so the fact that I couldn't get near it got me very upset. To answer why I did not just jump the fence, the answer was that it was an electric fence and if I touched it, I would get shocked. I got into contact with the man I put in charge of my animals to see what the hell happened while I was gone. He was for all intents and purposes in charge and should have stopped this from happening. He told me how the HOA president came and built the electric fence and nothing he was saying or doing was making him stop. That the HOA president claimed he actually owned half of my land and trespassing on it would be illegal and he would get hurt by the fence. I did not want to take my frustration out on him because he was my friend and I tried his best to handle things. Plus, I did tell him not to contact me while I was in the hospital and he obeyed that wish. I went over to the HOA president and started yelling at him instead for stealing half my land and fencing it off so I could not get to any of my things. In my rage with him barely getting to speak, I learned only 2 things that I cared about. The first was that he was feeding the animals, so at least I didn't need to worry about them starving. The second thing was that he claimed the HOA owned that half of the land, and he fenced it off to make sure that it was safe until he could transform it into something else. Looking back, I wish that I had just punched him in the face in that moment. I would have gotten in trouble, but it would have been worth it. I chose chaos and that I was gonna get on my land one way or another. I spent hours researching safe ways to get through the electric fence and although I did it, I would not recommend it. It was dangerous and you could easily get hurt. I went right to my wife's chair and sat down until HOA president showed up and saw me. He was furious that I damaged the fence and was on what he considered to be his property. He called the cops on me and wanted me arrested for trespassing despite the fact that it was my property. They asked me if I would leave and I told them no. They had no idea who was telling the truth, but they believed him instead of me and escorted me off the property. I then finally contacted a lawyer and started a lawsuit against him and his dumb organization for stealing my land and keeping me off of it. Without my wife, I really had nothing to lose and everything to gain. I did not care about anything else aside from my farm and he couldn't do anything to hurt me more than I already was. He did not have anything to show the land was his while I had records of the farm being bought and where the lines were from that. The only thing he had was claiming that since I was in his HOA, it meant that he owned half of my property. I think normally people would need to argue how they never agreed to join, but for me, that was not actually an issue. Like I said before, it was not actually an HOA, so they didn't have any rights about anything. In fact, him starting this thing just made him look worse and like he was trying to scam people. Because of him putting up the fence denying me access to my tools and animals, which in turn stopped me from earning any money and refusing to give me access, he ended up owing me $230,000. That was not the last thing that happened though. Since his little group was very clearly not legal, he was forced to get rid of this HOA because he had no right to take money from people or claim that he could go on their land. It was seen as kind of like a scam and the court did not want more people having issues with him. I was glad to have my farm back so I could at least attempt to get back into a normal life. I would have wanted to just give up, but I knew my wife would not have wanted me to do that. She would have wanted me to keep the farm and work hard and at least attempt to be happy with the rest of my life. The lawsuit and fight with the HOA president was actually a nice distraction from all the tragedy in my life, but I still could have gone without it. He does still live in the neighborhood, but since then has been very quiet and not drawn too much attention to himself since people know what a horrible person he is. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.